Welcome to Soul Path Alchemy, the place where we talk about the things most people avoid: sex, relationships, grief, desire, betrayal, healing, and everything in between. It's honest, it's unsanitized, and if it's what you've been craving, you're in the right place. I'm Annie O'Brien, psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and if you need more info, it's all in the bio. Let's begin. Heads up, this podcast isn't therapy. It's bold, blunt, and irreverent, but it's not a substitute for professional help. Full disclaimer is in the blurb below. Okay, today we have a dark one, and I warn you, it might land a little hard. So prevarication is essentially the fancy word that we use in therapy for lying, dodging, or bending the truth. But as a defense, it's not always the outright sociopathic manipulation we see in the dark triad. Sometimes it's ordinary people in shame, fear, or desperation. Sometimes it's pathological. That's when lying becomes the only way someone knows how to survive. So, Freud made me do it, prevarication, when the defense mechanism is lying. You've been lied to. We all have. Maybe it was the partner who swore they were faithful while they were sleeping with someone else. Maybe it was a friend who said they were fine when they were secretly seething. Or maybe if you're a therapist, it was your client. Yes, I've been lied to in therapy, straight to my face. So it's not just deceit, that's prevarication, the defense mechanism that protects the ego by bending reality until it fits the story you want to tell. So prevarication is as old as language. Freud saw it not just as conscious lying, but as an unconscious ego maneuver. Anna Freud placed it in the family of denial and rationalization. The psyche says, if I can rework the facts, I won't have to face shame, guilt, or consequence. In pathology, prevarication shows up in the dark triad. So you have narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. So narcissism, lying to maintain the grandiose self-image. Then Machiavellianism, lying as strategy, manipulation for gain. And psychopathy, well, lying without conscience, simply because it works. Here's the twist. Normal people do it too. A teenager lies about homework. A client may lie in therapy because the truth might feel too humiliating. A partner lies about spending because they can't face the conflict. Not every lie is sinister, but every lie is in fact defensive. So let's look at the definition of this one and how it works. So prevarication is a defense falsification. It can be blatant lying, half-truths, lying by omission, or subtle evasions. What makes it a defense is that it protects the psyche from something intolerable, i.e. shame, rejection, punishment, or exposure. It works by distortion. Reality gets reshaped, perhaps in words, tone, or omission, until it's bearable. And then the person lying often convinces themselves it's not really a lie. That's the ego's brilliance, the ability to lie and believe it simultaneously. So, let me go through everyday examples with contrast. I'll work through the dark triad right through to the ordinary and minor. So, on the dark triad, we would have a serial cheater that swears undying loyalty. The corporate Machiavellian manipulates facts to climb the ladder, and the psychopath lies without blinking because truth is completely irrelevant to them. And then, with ordinary people, the partner says, I'm fine, when they're not. The teenager insists that they studied when they definitely didn't. And the client in therapy denies drinking again, perhaps, even as the smell of alcohol hangs in the room. So with micro prevarications, these are the ones like white lies, half-truths, dodges. You say you forgot to reply when really you couldn't face it. You tell yourself it wasn't that bad, you weren't that hurt, it wasn't really cheating. These are all defensive prevarications. So let's turn to the clinical and relational impact. So in relationships, prevarication is corrosive. It erodes trust. Once someone catches a lie, every truth after that is suspect. Love can survive conflict, it rarely survives chronic dishonesty. In therapy, prevarication is very common. People lie regularly, sometimes deliberately, sometimes unconsciously. They cover up, they distort, and they rewrite. The countertransference? Well, you feel manipulated, mistrustful, even enraged, and yet you also see the vulnerability. The lie is usually a shield against unbearable shame. But let's not romanticize it. So repeated prevarication destroys intimacy, therapy, and credibility. The person gets trapped in their own web, isolated by the very defense that was meant to protect them. So why exactly does this matter? Prevarication doesn't just harm others, it harms the liar. It creates fragmentation. The person splits into the false self, the one telling the story, and the buried self, the one holding the truth, and over time they lose track of what's real. And when you can't tell the truth from defense, you lose integrity. Not the moral kind, but the psychic kind. The wholeness. So how to spot this in yourself? Have you ever bent the truth to avoid shame or conflict? Do you tell white lies so often that you forget the original truth? Do you create rationalizations that sound plausible but don't quite add up? Do you avoid full disclosure in therapy, in friendships, at work, or in other relationships? So if you want to change this, you don't dismantle prevarication by swearing to never lie again. That's just another lie. You change it by facing what you're trying to avoid. So start by asking, what truth feels unbearable here? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it fear of rejection? Second, experiment with micro-honesty. Admit one small truth that you usually dodge. Notice then that the world doesn't end and the sky definitely doesn't fall down. And third, trace the pattern. Do you prevaricate most in relationships or at work or perhaps just with family? That is going to tell you where shame is running the show in your life. And finally, compassion. Prevarication was a shield. Sometimes it saved your skin, but as an adult it often leaves you isolated, mistrusted and fragmented. The defense that once protected will now imprison you. So prevarication spares you from shame in the moment, but it guarantees you'll carry shame in the long run. Lies are incredibly heavy. They keep you split, mistrusted and alone. Prevarication protects the ego, but it also starves the soul. So where do you most often bend the truth? Perhaps in relationships, work, therapy, or maybe even with yourself? What feeling are you avoiding each time that you distort? And who do you mistrust because of their prevarication? And is there anyone who mistrusts you? What small truths do you dismiss as too awkward to say? And what would happen if you tried saying them anyway? What would it feel like to live with nothing to cover? No edits, no dodges, just clean truth. So, Freud made you do it, and I just made you see it. I hope you actually had a lot to reflect on in this one. It kind of makes me think of the Jim Carrey movie. So I'm Annie. I hope you have a really great day.